Gentlemen, can I ask if you're able to please stand?
Good afternoon. On behalf of Andre's wife Veronica, his son Neil and daughter Fiona and all of the family, may I welcome you here today for the funeral service of André Henry Gellert Saunders, as we gather to celebrate his life, to mourn his passing and allow him to be at peace with all of our love and our blessing. We are joined today via webcast by friends and family in Geneva, Paris, South Carolina, Norway, Scotland and England. And even though André was a Ouija from Loch Lomond side, his Edinburgh friends are also joining us. Let me begin by saying how fortunate we all are. Does that seem strange to say on a day when the overwhelming feeling is one of sorrow? And yet, whether it has been just for a few months or years, for many years, or for a whole lifetime, we have had the privilege of sharing our lives with a charismatic, colourful, and complex man. Of course, we should feel sad at our loss, but let us spend our short time together today thinking about the things André brought to our lives, not what he took when he left. André was always a bit of a charmer, a lovable, outspoken rogue, very intelligent with a quick wit and strong values, which could sometimes get him into bother. He was extremely loyal, but his single-mindedness meant that he was always right, even when he was wrong. Happy for his family to do anything they liked, as long as it was his way. His generosity knew no bounds, and he was always doing things for others, giving things to others. And it was part of his makeup that he would rather give than keep something for himself. As a teacher, he had always been smartly dressed, and even after he retired, he continued to wear a shirt and tie. Every day was still a school day for him. He wasn't at all flash, and aspired to a simple, frugal life, as we'll hear. Family was at his heart, and Neil and Fiona were in no doubt that they were loved. So it is to acknowledge André's life, full of endeavour and adventure, generosity and fun, love and friendship, that we come here today. Although we mourn a life that has ended after 80 years, what we will find is that our tears one moment will mingle with our laughter in the next as we recall happy memories of time spent with André. We must try to let today be an occasion to give thanks for and to celebrate his well-lived and happy life, a life we must consider ourselves fortunate to have shared. You would be hard-pressed to find a more single-minded man than André. This possibly stems from the fact that he was the firstborn child from a large family, used to sharing, but also to having to make his voice heard. He was born on the 28th of May, 1938, in Renton, Dumbartonshire. His dad, James, a highly intelligent Scotsman, was a senior translator for the UN in Switzerland, while his mum, Jacqueline, was French and a teacher. André grew up bilingual, although he never ever lost his strong Glasgow accent. His parents had met in Hungary and named their first child with French, Scottish and Hungarian influences. Gellert was a Hungarian prince. Sadly, during the Second World War, his parents split up, and after spending some time with his dad, André went to live with his granny in Vale of Leven in West Dumbartonshire. He attended Vale of Leven Academy, where he did well, moving on to attend Glasgow University, where he gained a BSc in physics. Following university, André moved to Geneva in Switzerland, where he became a translator at Nestlé, then became a maths and physics teacher at CDL, the international school there. It was while in Geneva that he met Betty and Dave King, both now sadly gone. But they were great friends for many years, and Dave was André's best man on more than one occasion. While at the school, he also met his first wife, Mabel, and they were married on Christmas Eve in 1959. They were blessed with 2 children, first Neil in 1960 and Fiona in 1963. Although Mabel and André later separated, they remained very good friends, frequently sharing company and supporting each other throughout their lives. One of the people André taught in Geneva between 1962 and 1964 was his brother, Alan. And through their mutual friend, Douglas Bell, some of André's former pupils have responded to the sad news with some short but heartfelt tributes, and I'd like to read some of those now. From Jack Connolly. I remember André to be one of the best teachers we had at CDL. From Lynn Thorson. André was my Algebra 2 teacher. I recall him being very diligent, but he did let us play bridge at the back of the room. A very Scottish gentleman. From John Ruth. You can always tell the value of a life by the impact it has on others. I would honestly say there are thousands of students who will remember André as an exceptional teacher. A dram of Scottish tears for this gift. See you down the road, old man. I'll bring the bottle. From Aviva Romani. He was just a very nice, insightful, smart person. I wish there were more like him, and I will sorely miss him and his presence in my life. I'm devastated to hear this. I loved André and will miss our occasional connections sorely. Condolences to everyone. From Jan Hedquist in Sweden. We'll miss the man a lot. He was funny, smart, cynical, and at times a bit weird. And we loved his Scottish accent, even in French. A good person. He made Kenneth McKellar proud. Altogether, a great package. André also has a much-loved brother and brother-in-law, and his brother Alan and Veronica's sister Margaret, on behalf of his sister Annick, will speak a little more about André at the funeral tea in Kelso after the service. In 1964, his good friend Dave King was offered a job in Kenya, while André had been offered a job in Canada. But thanks to Dave's persuasive nature, André accepted his invitation to join them in Nairobi teaching maths, physics and electrical engineering at Kenya High, at that time Kenya Polytechnic in the city. He was a well-respected teacher in Geneva and Nairobi, and later in Kelso and Galashiels. Andre's life in Kenya was good, and he shared many amazing adventures and unforgettable experiences with his family there. He climbed Mount Kenya with no apparatus or special equipment, and certainly no breathable waterproof clothing. As a family, they often travelled in convoy into the back of Beyond with Dave and Betty and their children Gordon and Shona. On one occasion, their vehicle was stopped by 3 Maasai tribesmen. They were sons of the chief, who was gravely ill, and they asked for Andre's help in getting him to the next town for medical care. Andre asked, "How far?" and received the reply, "We'll show you." The 3 sons ran ahead of the cars for around 15 miles, and Andre was able to deliver the chief to the hospital alive. As a thank you, the sons offered their gourd. Andre graciously accepted, but was pretty horrified to find that it was full of sour milk and blood. It was in Kenya that he began what would become a lifelong hobby in amateur radio. He had many high-profile achievements and a great many firsts. He was responsible for the first radio communication between Africa and Japan, and through his communications work he could count King Hussein of Jordan amongst his good friends. The king was a great radio enthusiast, and Andre was the first person in the world to speak to him on air. Andre was also the first person to speak to all 5 continents from Africa. Through this hobby, he was appointed communications manager for the East African Safari Rally, a huge event in its day, and a role he undertook for several years. He even competed in his Cortina Mark I in one of the years. His pride and joy, though, an MG TD5 was not designed for rallying and remained tucked away at home. For Andre, Mabel and the children, their time in Kenya felt like a 10-year holiday. But as they became aware of trouble simmering in the country, Andre took the decision to return to Scotland so that his children could have a Scottish education, and where Andre found teaching work first at Kelso High School and later at Galashiels Academy. In Kelso, he established the Kelso Amateur Radio Society, which attracted members from all spheres of life and of all ages, from school children to 70-plus-year-olds. Giving his time voluntarily, Andre took almost 50 members through their radio exams, leaving them with a legacy of contact and communication with the global radio community. He began the annual Kelso Amateur Radio Convention, which he organised with other club members, and it became the largest amateur radio rally in the south of Scotland, attracting nearly 1,000 visitors. Not long after moving to Galashiels Academy, he met Veronica Bamford, and in her he found a companion with whom he would be happy for the rest of his life. They enjoyed 29 happy years, travelling the world together. Veronica encouraged and supported him at all the rallies, and one year Andre spent 97 days away on various islands and trips, but after every one he was welcomed back with a dram, over which he shared his experiences. When he retired from teaching, he had more time to spend on other hobbies. Travelling the world was one, but fishing for trout on the Teviot and exploring the Scottish Islands were 2 others. The latter combined perfectly with his amateur radio interest, and he made expeditions to over 280 islands. He and Veronica celebrated his 65th birthday on Beachcomber Island in Fiji. It was a trip he had done with Neil and with Veronica before, but on that occasion the birthday surprise was the 65 girls who queued up to kiss him. The main thrust of his expeditions to islands was for a challenge that he created in partnership with his son Neil, but they fitted very well with Andre's quest for a simple life, as he insisted on living in a basic camp and carrying his own equipment, provisions and water to each island. You can see the amount of kit he took with him on the back of your order of service. He was very frugal, and the little pan of water he used in the morning for his egg was then split between making his cup of coffee and his daily shave. The challenge was to make 100 contacts from each island in order to make the visit count for registration. When he set up the challenge, he didn't envisage doing every island himself, but he did, some in the company of Neil and others in the company of his son-in-law Dave. André spent the entire winter preparing new equipment and contacting landowners and boatmen to get the necessary permissions. By careful management of his time on the islands, he was able to capture contacts from all around the world, and he made every visit count. For a man who never travelled well on boats, he did pretty well. And of course, he did it all, wearing a cagoule from Lidl. Another example of André's frugality is that he often bought himself a bottle of whisky, but despite loving a good malt, his treat was a dram from a bottle of Lidl's Best at $8.99. At one point, he had 45 bottles of whisky stored upstairs, but frequently told his neighbour and good friend Frank that they were being saved for his wake. Frank duly replied, "That's no good to me, André, I drink gin." André was a very giving man and was usually the one in control, not prone to expressing too much emotion. But when his family surprised him with a big family gathering for his 50th birthday, he cried for 2 hours. His genuine kindness became obvious when André discovered that an acquaintance was dying in hospital and had no family to visit him. André sat by his side every single day, just chatting away, to keep him company on his last journey. André was a scientist. He dealt in facts. He needed evidential proof. And he held strong views on many things. Ask any of the religious or political callers who happened to press his doorbell. He was unwilling to bend on the things that he believed in. And while friends respected those views and that strength of belief, it didn't always make life easy for him or the people close to him in life. But André had a good and very positive influence on many young lives through his encouragement to fulfill their potential, and a significant impact on older lives too, encouraging those who shared his interest in radio to take it as far as they could and to open up new worlds to them. His illness was short, and his death was sadly very sudden, but André passed away peacefully at home with no regrets, content that he had lived a long and good life. Even at the end, he was concerned that his death would cause pain for his beloved Veronica and for his children, of whom he was so very proud. We should all feel proud and privileged to have known André and to have walked a little way along life's path in his company. And for the amateur radio enthusiasts here today, this is 73 from GM3 VLB. While on the island of Fulla, André and Veronica got stuck for a little longer than expected and found a poem in the cottage where they were staying. It struck a chord with André, so much so that he copied it down in his own hand, and I'd like to invite André's son-in-law Dave to read it for us now. The poem is called "If Once You've Slept on an Island" and is written by Rachel Fields.
If once you've slept on an island, you'll never be quite the same. You may look as you looked the day before and go by the same old name. You may bustle about in street and shop. You may sit at home and sew. But you'll see the blue water and wheeling gulls wherever your feet may go. You may chat with the neighbours of this and that, and close to your fire keep. But you'll hear ship whistle and lighthouse bell, and tides beat through your sleep. Oh, you won't know why, and you can't say how. Such a change upon you came. But once you've slept on an island, you'll never be quite the same.
Thank you, Dave. We will all have known a slightly different André because of the unique chemistry between us, the conversations and experiences we shared, and the many personal memories we created with him. Before we say farewell, we have a chance to reflect on those memories, to consider what they will mean to us and to those who grieve alongside us. In these few moments, those of you who have a faith may wish to offer a personal prayer. But let us all take this opportunity to thank André for everything that he taught us, for the many things he did for us, and for the joy, the love, and the laughter he brought to our lives. While we reflect, we will hear some of the sounds of nature that André loved so much. As we look back over time, we find ourselves wondering, did we remember to thank you enough for all that you've done for us? For all the times you were by our sides to help and support us, to celebrate our successes, to understand our problems and accept our defeats? Or for teaching us by your example the value of hard work, good judgment, courage and integrity? We wonder if we ever thanked you for the simple things like laughter, smiles, and the times we shared. Those who have already shown their appreciation reaffirm it today. But if we have forgotten to show our gratitude enough for all the things you did for us, André, we're thanking you now, and we're hoping you knew all along just how much you meant to us. Please stand for the committal if you can comfortably do so. André Henry Gellert Saunders, your life we honour, your departure we accept, and your memory we cherish. In grief at your death, but in gratitude for your life, we are truly grateful for the privilege of having shared life with you. You leave this world and all of us richer by your example, and your legacy will live on in those you leave behind. Rest now at the end of your days. Rest in the hearts and minds of all who love you, and be at peace. Golf, Mike, 3, Victor, Lima, Bravo. Please be seated. We are not meant to avoid life in fear of death. We are meant to live each moment fully, to connect with our environment and the people in our lives, to share the best of ourselves generously, to have courage, to do what needs to be done, and to practice our deepest convictions. Thus, in the end, whenever our time may come, we can face it with peace, satisfied in our hearts that we were human and we really, really lived. That is exactly what André did to the best of his ability. Try to imagine if we'd never met him, never got to know him, never had the chance to love him. How much poorer would our lives be? How much richer our own lives are because we've been lucky enough to have André as part of our life story. May the love of friends, the joy of memory, and our hopes for the future give us strength and peace that we might go forward together until a new day breaks and the shadows lessen. On behalf of Veronica, Neil and Margaret, Fiona and David, and all of André's family, thank you very much for your presence here today and for all of your friendship, love and support which contributed so much to André's enjoyment of life. Your cards and thoughtful words have been very much appreciated. The family have politely asked to be excused the emotional stress of shaking hands outside, but would dearly like as many as possible of you to join them for refreshments at the Cross Keys in Kelso after the service if you're able, by which time they will be more able to speak to you all. Please do come along if you can, and you can share your stories and memories with them. Veronica and the family would also like to extend their sincere thanks to Macmillan Nursing, district nurses, GPs and the out-of-hours team, occupational therapist and dietitian, who cared for André and supported them in recent weeks. Donations will be passed to Erskine, the Veterans Charity, should you wish to give one as you leave. Can I extend my own personal thanks to André's family for allowing me the privilege of conducting the service today, and to Dave for his heartfelt reading. We entered to the Skyboat song by Taryn Harbridge. Skye was one of André's favourite islands, and in a similar vein, our final piece of music is The Dark Island, played by the band of the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards, as we sign off with QRT, Stop Sending. Please stand if you're able as we pay our last respects to André.